Dr. Jerry, you got the whole world waiting. Been ready for you to start the conversation. Your point of view, it got the haters confused. Leave it up to you to bring us all the good news. Positive vibes and the sex appeal too. Dr. Andre Jerry, can I get an interview?
Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Live with Dr. Andre Jerry. I want to thank you for tuning in tonight, especially since this is the first show in our new time slot, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern, every fourth Wednesday of each month. I appreciate you sharing an hour of your evening with me, supporting this broadcast and the Artist First Radio Network. Listen, you guys are in for an awesome show tonight. So, if you've been following the show the past 2 months, you've noticed that we touch on a different topic each episode. Well, this month, in light of the midterm elections coming up in just a few weeks, and with early voting already taking place in many states, I felt compelled to have somewhat of a political discourse on a topic that's not often talked about. In tonight's show, we're going to focus on a segment of the electorate that's often misunderstood. They're an underrepresented minority within a minority. I'm talking about Black Republicans. In recent headlines, we've been hearing a lot of negative press about prominent Black Republicans, namely Candace Owens, Kanye West, and Herschel Walker, who've been criticized by many in the Black community due to their antics, ideology, and controversy surrounding their personal lives. Now, tonight's show is not intended to litigate the actions of those individuals I just named, nor is it my intention to speak negatively of them tonight. Instead, the objective of tonight's show is to draw a distinction between prominent Black Republicans that are now emerging to the forefront and the everyday Black Republicans that may be our neighbors, colleagues, or relatives. It's important to note that while Kanye, Candace, and Herschel may be a few of the prominent Black Republicans of our day, not all Black Republicans are a monolith. Tonight, we're having a frank discussion with a self-described Black Republican who's also a retired Army combat veteran with 20 years of service to our country. This gentleman is an avid reader and a lifelong learner, completing 4 years of multidisciplinary studies with a concentration in criminal justice. He's also an accomplished student of the culinary arts at Helms College, where he was selected among top graduates by the Augusta National Country Club to display his culinary skills at the 2019 Masters Tournament. In recognition of his service, he received the prestigious white jacket at the Masters, the only graduate from Helms College to earn one. My guest today is a proud father of 3 remarkable grown children who are making their mark in real estate and jurisprudence. He also mentors young men in his community, encouraging greatness, integrity, and an entrepreneurial mindset. He also happens to be one of my best friends. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the show, Mr. Craig Whitehead. Craig, how's it going, brother?
Hey, it's going awesome tonight, Dr. Jerry. Awesome. I'm very glad to be here tonight, sir.
Well, hey, listen, I'm happy to have you on, Craig. We've been talking about doing this show for a while now, so I'm finally so excited to have you on here. So, listen, I know that we know each other very well, but a few moments ago, I shared a few highlights about your background and your accomplishments, but I want you, for the listeners who are listening to this evening, they haven't had a chance to meet you. Explain to them in your own words who Craig Whitehead is.
Okay, well, not trying to... first of all, I want to just say thank you for inviting me to your show tonight, and thank all the listeners that are in on tonight's show. A little bit about me. I'm not trying to rehash everything that you went over tonight, but I do take pride in retiring from the military. I did retire from the military with 2 combat tours. Was almost taken out on my first combat tour. Spent like 2 days in intensive care, but I made it out and made it back to the house. Outside of that, I'm a young man who grew up in Mississippi up until around the 10th grade. It's when I migrated over into Louisiana, where I completed my schooling, and then I started my career there in Louisiana. In the As a young high school student, I worked at Walmart for a few years during high school and after high school. At a certain point, I left that and went into law enforcement and became a police officer for a couple of years. And then I set out to accomplish my childhood dreams, which I made at the table when I was about 6, maybe 7 years old. My mother, she asked me one day at the table, she said, "Craig, what do you want to be when you grow older?" I said, "Mama," I said, "I want to be a police officer, and I want to join the Army and go to war." And I know that was kind of crazy saying that back then, but I was able to accomplish both of those goals. Police officer first, then joining the Army, and of course, Desert Storm back in '91 allowed me to go and complete that goal, which is to go to war. And I will tell you now, war in any capacity is not fun. It plays a lot on the mind, especially when you leave. So yes, I do also suffer from PTSD, but I still have a pretty decent mind. I'm an avid reader, as you stated earlier. I love reading nonfiction books. I mainly read books in law, criminal justice, and a big reader on history of my people. I always want to go back and see where we came from, what happened to us, how it happened to us, and things of that nature. And try to encourage others, hey, read up on your history, because a lot of our history was stolen from us. And it's important that you go back and identify who you were in order to be able to move forward productively. I also hike. I love hiking. I love kayaking. I love cycling. And I'm also a licensed firearm instructor. I consider myself to people pro-military and pro-constitutionist. So that's kind of a little bit about me. I'm a laid-back guy, but I love adventurous things, as you know.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you, Craig, for your service in both law enforcement and in the military. You know, yes, and I appreciate you giving your or our listeners some insight into your background and your personal journey. That definitely helps our audience, particularly those that are more on the liberal and progressive side. It helps understand the person behind the political stance, you know, because oftentimes Black Republicans are mischaracterized by the Black community. They use words such as sellouts, anti-Black, Uncle Toms, house Negroes, just all types of horrible things. But people would be surprised to know that you are actually very pro-Black and extremely knowledgeable about Black history as it relates to politics and even our true lineage. Right.
You know, it's kind of funny that you say, you know, that people call you a sellout. And I get that. I don't have a problem with people saying, and I just look at that as just saying that they're ignorant. Ignorant is not a bad word. It just means that you just don't know. You haven't came into the light yet. And so I would tell you this, yes, I am fully Black, skin and heart and soul. But I would also tell you this, Dr. Jerry. There's a young man who mentioned during his campaign that if you don't vote for him, you're not Black. So I teasingly tell people I'm not Black, because no, I'm not going to vote that way. And I have my reasons, which we'll get into later on in the show. But I grew up in a Democratic family. For those that are listening, I wasn't always a Republican. I only became a Republican once I retired from the military. So that just shows you how long I was in that mindset. Or should I say I was in that woke state. So I didn't wake up until I actually left the military. So that's kind of what I look at there when it comes down to talking about a sellout.
Wow. And I do remember that statement you're talking about, and I know you were trying to be respectful of right, by not saying any particular names, but for anyone that's caught that, he's referring to President Biden when he was on the campaign trail, campaigning for president. I believe he was on the Breakfast Club. Yes. He was on the Breakfast Club, and he made a statement, something to the effect of, well, if you don't vote for me, you're not Black. And a lot of people took offense to that. I didn't particularly take offense to it because I understood what he was trying to say. It came out really horribly. And if you know Joe Biden, he's known for his famous gaffes and just saying stuff that just really could have came out or came across a better way. Sure. But I certainly understand why you took offense to that, as a lot of people did. So I just wanted to clarify that for our listeners. But you are extremely knowledgeable about Black history, and you even relate some things to me in just casual conversations that we were having about the history of Black people in the Republican Party. Can you talk a little about that?
Oh, the Black people in the Republican Party. Well, not that many of us. If you combine us all up and do the separation, you'll see how many you have Democrats as far as how many Blacks you have as far as Democrats, how many Blacks you have as far as Republicans. Republican is a small percentage of the Black population of the votes. However, I consider the Black Republicans to be more knowledgeable in the area of the values and morals of the party. As I shared with you on many occasions, I had to do some research years ago, and I had to look up the values and the morals of each party. Because remember, I grew up under one umbrella, which is the Democratic Party, and that's all I ever knew. So right. when I began to read, and I wasn't always a reader. Again, I didn't start reading until my military career. I started reading, and I just couldn't stop. I picked up book after book after book. And one thing I do realize is that if you read, you can gain your freedom mentally. And so that actually helped me out a lot. So to be able to read and understand the different values of each party, my values lined up more with the Republican Party than it did the Democratic Party. And I just sat back and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I've been voting this way the whole entire time. But again, I was ignorant at that time, and so when I made my shift, not only did I shift and vote on the right, I also had a humongous shift in my mindset. So you can vote whatever, but you got to have the mindset to go with it. And I love the mind shift that I made with the Republican Party than the mindset that I had with the Democratic Party. For an example, handouts. All I knew in life growing up is we need to vote Democrat because the Democratic Party is going to give us things at no cost or very, very low cost. Whereas the Republican Party, you had to work for what you wanted. And I said, which one of these is better for me? Well, I believe in working for what you want. I got that from the military. The military is very structured for those that were in the military before. And then I allowed the military to change my mindset. My mindset wasn't always like that. I was on the bandwagon of the Democrat. Hey, I'm going to vote on the Democrat side because they're going to give me this, they're going to give me that. But keep in mind, anytime the government gives you something free, there's always, Dr. Jerry, strings attached. And I promise you're not going to like those strings that are attached. But it's nothing you can do about it once you have accepted whatever they have given you. I always would choose now, and I teach my children who are now grown adults, you make your own decision on which party you vote for, but this is why your father votes this way. I vote this way because of the moral values that they have. And plus, just to take a small snippet out of this, that's other things like, we don't, the Republican Party don't believe in taxing the rich with higher taxes. Where the Democrat side, they want to tax the rich with higher taxes. For what? These people had ideas in their kitchen or they had ideas in their garage, and they became fruition, and they are now able to make millions of dollars off of it. You can do the same thing. Just go to your kitchen table or go to your garage, create your idea, put it in motion, and now you can become wealthy. Dr. Jerry, I'm an entrepreneur by heart. I've been an entrepreneur for many years. And it's the mindset the mindset that I had to shift. I don't need a handout. What I need is a fair and equal opportunity to be able to make it. And
Yes.
if I continue to get handouts, then my seatbelt is on. I can't move. So I had to take that seatbelt off, get up, and go out and create my own wealth. A lot of people, I'm just speaking generally, will blame another culture for their demise. No, you have the same opportunity. Just get up and move forward. And you mentioned earlier about there are a lot of black Republicans, not as many as black Democrats, but we're growing in numbers because people are waking up. And I try to wake up many people. As a matter of fact, during this past election, I was talking to many people about, hey, be careful what you're doing. And, of course, they didn't want to hear me. They just didn't want to hear me. But shortly after that, I can almost say probably 70, if not 80% of those individuals who I know personally came back to me and said, man, I should have listened to you. I say, hey, I tried to tell you.
Wow.
You know, you got to be careful of what you do. Look at the party values. That party has never done anything for us. They always promise us things. Somebody's going to say, well, the Republican Party ain't done nothing for us either. You're exactly right, but here's the deal. The Republican Party ain't promised you nothing either.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that other party promise you things, but they only promise you that till they get in the office. Then once they get in the office, they go to doing other things. I mean, you look back, and again, I'm not going to call them names, but we've had past presidents who we thought they got in office. One particular who I won't name, I congratulate him on making it. But what did you do for our people? Nothing. What did you do? Absolutely nothing. What executive order have you signed for our people? You did nothing. And so the Republican Party just say, just come to work. We're going to give you a fair opportunity to be productive in life. And that's all they want you to do. Now, there's no perfect party, and I get that. We all want to join hands, Dr. Jerry, and sing Kumbaya.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. We will always have division. Division first started, if those that do believe in the Bible, division first started in the book of Genesis when God separated light from the darkness. That's division. You're going to always have division as you go through life. We got the left. We have the right. The left talks about the right. The right talks about the left. Then somebody says, why can't we all just get along? I'm sorry. We will never all just get along. It's just the nature of the beast. You have to be smart enough to choose the right decisions for your party and cast your vote in what's best interest for you and your values. And so I choose to escape from that party and come over to the Republican side, and that's where I will be until I leave this earth, unless something drastically changes.
Well, I definitely am tracking your point of view. So far, you have not said anything that I take issue with. So you made some really good points. And one thing you reminded me of during one of our recent conversations, and I almost forgot about this, but it actually was the Republican Party that advocated for abolitionists and for the ending of slavery. And that's something, most people know that, but then there are a huge swath of people that aren't familiar with that. So that's something that you reminded me of recently. And we know that, well, go ahead. Go with your point.
Right. And so that's my argument to some people sometimes, as I say, now listen, why, just a hypothetical, why would you want to cast your vote to a party that had us enslaved, raped our sisters, our mothers, killed our fathers, shot our brothers to death? Why would you want to support a vote for that party? When the other party that came about, which was a group of Caucasian men up north who were considered anti-slavery, who joined together and formed the Republican Party. And the South, of course, says at some point during the game, we want to push our agenda up north. In other words, we want to take slavery and push it up north.
Right.
Well, the North says no. Our blacks up north are going to continue to be free. Of course, what happened after that, the war broke out, North against the South, and the North won. Thank God the North won. That was a song years ago, said if the South would have won, we'd have had it made. And watch this. For many years, I used to sing that song. I didn't know what I was singing. I was just singing a song because it had a good tune to it. But had the South won, you and I probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. We'll probably be out in the cotton fields of Georgia picking cotton right about now. But the North did win. And so it was the Republican Party that set us free, not the Democratic Party. So I cannot support someone who had my ancestors enslaved and did all of that damage to them. I take offense to that. And so I'm glad I left. What I'm sad about is I didn't wake up earlier and see that. That's what I'm sad about.
Wow.
And basically, that's what I'm going to say about that, sir.
Well, listen, what is this song that you're referencing earlier about when the South, if the South would have won?
I can't remember the song. I think it was like a country song that came out. All I know was that lyric. I could not sing the song for you. Wouldn't want to sing the song for you, but I know if I was probably to Google it, the song actually pop up or something like that. But it boils down to, at some point, we all have to wake up and see the reality. I give an example. For those that may be listening, there's a book that I try to encourage my people to read. Start here, and this book hopefully will wake you up. The book is called The Destruction of Black Civilization. I'll say that again. The Destruction of Black Civilization. It's written by Chancellor Williams. Chancellor Williams. That is an excellent book that will take you back and bring you all the way forward. Now, it's gonna blow your mind with some things that happened back then, because it definitely blew my mind and educated me. And then once you finish reading The Destruction of the Black Civilization, because it was destroyed, then I will tell you to go forward and read another book to show you a blueprint, a plan on how to move forward. Now, the name of this book is called Powernomics, Powernomics, Powernomics. Now, that's the national plan to empower Black America. It's nothing but a blueprint. Pretty thick book, but I've read it in its entirety. It's written by Claude, C-L-A-U-D, Anderson. Claude Anderson. The book is called Powernomics. It's a powerful book. Both of those two books just alone should make you really, really consider what you're doing. Because to me, every time we cast a vote on that Democratic side, we are slapping our ancestors in the face. Because remember, us as a Black people, we voted Republican up until the late 20s. We all voted Republicans. Many of us lost our lives because, see, the Democratic Party knew that we did not want to be enslaved, and the Republicans said, we don't want you to be enslaved. Well, Lincoln got into office, and Lincoln signed us out of slavery. Now, that was a great thing. Now, sometimes I ask people, do you know what party Lincoln was in? Oh, he was a Democrat. No, he wasn't. He was Republican, and he got us out of slavery. Here's the thing with me. I want to stay out of slavery. Now, there's two types of slavery. There's the physical slavery of you out picking cotton physically. There's the mental slavery of what's happening right now.
Right.
The government gives you handouts. Example, just one example, because I know I'm talking long here. Hey, listen, we'll give you low-income housing, but the father of your children cannot stay with you. What are we doing there, government? Well, I'm trying to get the Black man out the home. If I can get him out the home, then the children are pretty much doomed, because they got two places to go: graveyard or to the prison system. Well, who owns all the prison systems? Well, we know who owns all the prison systems. Yes, I get it. Some people do escape poverty. Got it. I was there myself. I escaped. Okay, through the military. But Here's the deal. We got to find a way to get out of this stuff. The only way we're going to do it is read and put the actions in place and try to encourage others how to get out of slavery, this mental slavery. I'm giving you housing, but your children's father cannot be there with you. Now, you know when you take the father out of the home, what happens to the children. I grew up in a single-parent home. I was probably one of the most rebellious young men growing up in a single-parent home, mother trying to raise two children, and I'm the one that's giving her hell the entire time when I was a young man. You know, I look back on that. Yes, I apologized to my mother when I got older. I did, but when I was young, I didn't know. I didn't have no father figure there. I tell my children today, look, my father and you guys is OJT. I had no role models in my life, father-wise, to teach me how to do it. So, yes, I made mistakes even with my own children, but I went back later to ask for forgiveness of that. And I tell them, you grew up with the father in the home. Do better than what I've done. So when you take
Craig, this is why I wanted to have you on the show, because I knew you were going to bring a different perspective and just bring some valuable information that kind of illuminates topics that we don't really hear a robust conversation about. We're going to pause right here and take a quick commercial break. And when we return, we're going to continue our discussion on conservatism, Black Republicans. We'll be right back, everyone.
Hey, ladies, have you ever dated a married man? Have you ever thought to yourself, that would never be me? Have you ever wondered, how could she? Have you ever said, she should be ashamed of herself? Well, I used to say those same things, and I've pointed fingers that I don't point anymore, because now I am that other woman. What do you do when you meet a man that makes you question everything you thought was wrong? Where do you go when life has led you into a dark place where society frowns upon you and even your own mother is disappointed in you? Who do you turn to for guidance and support when there's no one you can share your secret with? Life is more complex than the list of rules you've been taught throughout the years. Situations are not always black and white. Sometimes your mind and your heart don't want the same thing, and you find yourself in a battle between right and wrong. I never understood how women got themselves in these situations until I was that woman. We don't always seek the circumstances we end up in. Although many people may not understand, there are some that do. If you ever find yourself dealing with a forbidden love, How to Date a Married Man, 10 Rules of Engagement, written by Dr. Andre Jerry, is a must-read. It's not comprised of judgments and lectures, but rather rules of engagement that you must apply when you find yourself the other woman in his life. Ready to learn more? The controversial new book, How to Date a Married Man, 10 Rules of Engagement, written by relationship expert Dr. Andre Jerry, is now available for sale exclusively on Amazon and Kindle.
Hey, yo, Von, throw the 808 on that. I told my wife and my mama I will only let that pain strengthen me.
It's making me stronger.
And I know I am the way I am cause of all of them traumatic experiences.
I've been through some trauma.
I'm ready for hell finally, I'm ready to listen now. I wasn't ready then.
I just wasn't ready.
I know it took a while for me to actually want to smile more, but I've been trying to be a better man.
And I'm getting better.
I I kept my head above water when it felt like I was gonna drown. Absolutely nowhere to go, I had nobody around. Overwhelmed by the pain and suffocated by doubt. Man, it's just crazy to think that I still found a way out. I did it on my own too. Who am I kidding? Gotta thank my wife, cause I couldn't have done it without you. And I thank God every single day that I found you. If I die today, then the legacy is what I leave behind. But I promise, baby, you gon' be just fine. I hope we got time for we reach that line. Cross that line, then leave this life. I know a whole lot that beyond your mind. Be hard for you to even think sometimes. But we know that time is coming, we can't avoid it. I just wanna live in the moment, cause life is short. I told my wife and my mama I will only let that pain strengthen me.
It's making me stronger.
And I know I am the way I am, cause of all of them traumatic experiences.
I've been through some trauma.
I'm ready for help finally, I'm ready to listen now. I wasn't ready then,
I just wasn't ready.
I know it took a while for me to actually wanna smile more, but I've been trying to be a better man.
And I'm getting better, yeah.
I just wanna hold you tight and fall asleep in your arms. And any problems we face, they cannot go unresolved. I would trade my life for your happiness and the beat of a heart. You were the light to my path, you helped me see in the dark, and I found my way home. It all started off by you telling me I need to stay strong. I have every right to feel the way I do, and that I ain't wrong. But my feelings can't be expressed through my anger. Man, when I tell you I've been blessed with an angel, she keeps it real when she tells it. Her presence is angelic. Her love is my drug, her love is my psychedelic. Girl, I need you forever, I hope our souls live forever. And I don't know how that works, but God, I sure hope you let us. I told my wife and my mama I will only let that pain strengthen me.
It's making me stronger.
And I know I am the way I am, cause of all of them traumatic experiences.
I've been through some trauma.
I'm ready for help finally, I'm ready to listen now. I wasn't ready then,
I just wasn't ready.
I know it took a while for me to actually wanna smile more, but I've been trying to be a better man.
And I'm getting better.
I know it took a while for me to actually wanna smile more, but I've been trying to be a better man.
And I'm getting better.
Man, I'm ready for help finally, I'm ready to listen now. I wasn't ready then,
I just wasn't ready.
You're back live with Dr. Andre Jerry.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. So you just finished listening to the brand new track by independent artist Jill Brown entitled Better, produced by Von Make Hits, and is now available on all streaming platforms. Really quick, I want to give a special shout out to Jill Brown and congratulate him on the success of his new single Better, which is now being played on Red 94.5 out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and soon on radio stations across the nation. But remember, you heard him here first, right here on the Artist First Radio Network. And listen, if you're an author, entrepreneur, or independent artist who'd like your latest project featured on our show, then send my team an email at livewithdrandrejерry@gmail.com and we'll get you squared away. Now listen, if you're just joining us, we've been having a robust discussion with Craig Whitehead, who's a retired Army combat veteran and a self-described black Republican. So before the break, we touched on sort of the history of the Republican Party, and we talked about conservative values. In this segment, I want to pick up on something that we talked about right before the break. So when we were talking about the history of the Republican Party, you mentioned Abe Lincoln, which, of course, it was widely known that he was a well-known abolitionist who was against slavery. And many of us would be surprised to know that actually Abe Lincoln was often referred to as the first black Republican. When he ran for the Illinois Senate in 1858, I believe it was, against incumbent Stephen Douglas. And Stephen Douglas was a staunch Democrat, and he was also a proponent for slavery. He is the one that coined the term black Republican, and he referred to Abe Lincoln as a black Republican on the campaign trail repeatedly. And this was for, being an abolitionist against slavery. Well, this term black Republican caught on, and it began to be used during the Reconstruction era for Republicans who supported legislation that favored African Americans. So In my intro for tonight's show, Craig, I referenced Black Republicans as a minority within a minority. And before we got further into the topic of tonight, I wanted to examine that a little further and provide some statistical data that will give our listeners a clearer perspective of this peculiar segment of voters. So, Black Americans account for 13.6% of all eligible voters in the United States, according to Pew Research. And so that's approximately 32.7 million people, which is a relatively small number of the overall electorate. But out of that 32.7 million people, nearly 80% of Black registered voters identify as Democrats, and only 10% identify as Republican. So that's what I mean when I reference Black Republicans as a minority within a minority. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that because, you know, and you touched on this a little bit, Craig, you know, with the Democratic Party stance on slavery, it's really difficult for me to understand how such an overwhelming majority of us align ourselves with the Democratic Party even today.
Okay. Okay, so my take on that is, again, I have to restate that we as a Black people, we always voted Republican when we were allowed to vote. That was our vote, Republican. It wasn't until Johnson got in office, that being Lyndon B. Johnson got into office, and he created the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Now, granted, the Civil Rights Act, some would say, was specifically for the Blacks. No, it was not. It was for everybody. Mr. Johnson says that, and he made a statement that if I can get these people to vote for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, I can have them voting for the Democratic Party for the next 200 years. Now, I can't use the words on air that he actually said, but that's as close as I can get by, you know, with keeping it clean. So that Civil Rights Act of 1964, when our people, because again, in that Civil Rights Act, remember, our people are looking for a handout. And so that played right into their hands. And so they said, hey, we're going to lead the Republican Party, and we're going to go vote for the slave master, which is the Democratic Party, the same party that had our ancestors enslaved, the same party that raped our mothers, our sisters, killed our brothers, killed our fathers. We're going to go vote for them. So that was a good move for Johnson. He blindfolded a lot of us. Now remember, during slavery, one of the things that was taught to you as a slave was you can do everything in the fields, you can do everything that you want to do. One thing you cannot do is read. That was not allowed because they knew that if you read, you will eventually free yourself. Here's what I tell people today. I've heard it from someone else, and I'll say it here on the show. If you want to hide something from a Black man, where do you put it? You put it in a book.
In a book.
Because they ain't going to read it. And so that's why you continue to stay ignorant of what's going on around you and what you could be doing in the future. You have to wake up. You got to pick up a book and read it. Listen, I wasn't always a reader, but I had to do that. Let's talk about your numbers of the 32.7 million that you talked about from that research, whatever company that you mentioned, which is 80% Black Democrats and 10% Republicans. That equates to roughly about 3 million Black Republicans.
Yes.
Let's look at this for a moment. So if the 32.7 million that you talked about, and we extract 3 million Republicans from that, that leaves you with 29.7%
a little under 30
Democrat.
million, yeah.
Right. So what if, hypothetically, just what if you take 29.7 million Blacks and exit the Democratic Party and they go to the Republican Party? Wait a minute. Also bring them change their mindset from a handout to a worker bee, which means work for what you want. Stop looking for a handout. What would happen to the Democratic Party? They would crumble. They would crumble. Why? Because they no longer have mental slavery. The prison systems would go out of business. All these big guys around here got these prisons making millions and millions of dollars off of blacks entering the system. We know in the legal system, it's unfair justice. You take a white guy, you take a black guy, same age, same crime. Who's going to get the most time? The prisons are designed for us to go in there. They want to keep you confined. They don't want you in a home with your children. But if we can exit that party, they would crumble. Now, by them coming over to the Republican Party, of course, changing your mindset to not get a handout but to work, what would happen to our economy? It would flourish. It would soar like an eagle. What would happen to our blacks financially? Everybody would be well off financially. Why?
Yes.
Because you're no longer looking for a handout. We're banding together. You will have a new black Wall Street. And the government don't want you to do that, meaning the Democratic Party does not want you to do that. They don't want you to exit. They always want you to they always want you to accept a handout. It is so easy to hold your hand out and accept it. It's easy to do that. You have to pull back and say no. I give a reference sometimes, Dr. Jerry. If you take two people and you tell them, put your arms out front. Now, here's how I look at the Republican Party. With both arms out front, palms facing down, that's the Republican Party. We believe in working. Whereas the Democratic Party hold both hands out, their palms are facing towards the sky. We're looking for a handout. You got to get rid of that mindset.
Right.
Listen, I was there once, so you can't say I don't know. I was there once. I grew up in that area. I grew up on welfare with my mom, going to the store, pulling out those little fake Monopoly bills, paying for that stuff. I don't have to do that anymore. My mindset has changed. When you change your mindset, you become free. I have in my signature block and all of my emails say the educated mind cannot be enslaved. I probably sent you some emails before where you've seen that statement. And I so hardly believe that. If you educate yourself, pick up a book and read it, especially your history. A lot of our history literally was stolen from us. If you want to defeat a people, take their history from them. And we'll stay with that party. And so, again, if I look at those numbers, and if we was to exit hypothetically, and we would be economically free, financially free, by all means. But the Democratic Party would have nowhere to go. Now, granted,
let's stick with that, because I do think a lot of minorities, blacks in particular, they're becoming more awakened to the fact that, you know, if they look around at their own personal communities and they look at what progress has been made, really nothing has gotten that much better under Democrat or liberal leadership, if we're honest. I mean, we're still dealing with poor water quality in many minority communities across the U.S. Voter suppression is rampant across many states, especially in the southern region of the country. And then we got the racial violence that's out of control. And that doesn't even take into account the economy, the housing market downturn, inflation, just, you know, the overall trajectory of the nation. So I feel like a lot of Democrats are now starting to maybe question their allegiance to the Democratic Party. And, you know, if the Republicans were, not all of them, but if they were not so blinded by hatred and anti-ism right now, I think that they could potentially siphon off a nice chunk of black supporters from the Democrats. What do you think?
Absolutely. I have to fully agree with you on that. They could get a lot of Democrats to come over. But again, because you have been trained so long of getting a handout, you're looking to switch parties and say, okay, and I've heard this before when I talk to people, well, if I switch over to the Republican Party, what are they going to give me? And I say, nothing. They ain't giving you nothing. I said, look at any Republican that runs for office. They don't promise you nothing. For what? We are a working class people. The Democratic Party goes going to give me this and give me that. Exactly, but you got strings attached with that. Why can't you work for what you want? Exit that party, change your mindset, pick up a book and read it. Entrepreneur, that should be no reason why we have people without income today, because there's too much entrepreneur opportunities out there. It's a simple, I tell people, go to YTU. If you want to learn how to make money, go to YTU. Well, what's YTU? It's a university that's free of charge to learn how to make money. But Craig, what's that? YouTube University.
Yes.
I spent hours and hours on YouTube. A lot of my income, I learned how to get that income straight off of YTU, YouTube University. I applied those methods, and now I got streams of income coming in. I'm not rich by no means, but I'm not like I used to be when I was on the Democratic side looking for a handout. I'm just not. Now, are there entrepreneurs on the Democratic side? Absolutely, there are. There are rich people on the Democratic. I get all of that. I'm just saying, we as a people, we got to come out of that. Stop voting for the slave master who's promising you things. The right ain't promising you nothing but an opportunity to be better. That's it. Take that and run with it.
Take that and run with it. You know what? I'm so glad that I'm having you on this show, because I knew you would bring, just some clarity on this, and just maybe not. It's not like we're trying to convert anyone, but I just want to dispel the myth that Black Republicans don't like themselves. They don't like Black people. All this nonsense that we hear, and we do know that there's some people out there that are a little different, but.
Sure.
Like I said in the beginning, all Black Republicans are not a monolith, and they're not anti-Black largely. You can listen to Mr. Whitehead here and just kind of see where he's coming from and see how he got his mindset. I think you've done a great job of, talking about your background and talking about your values and how the military shaped your values and beliefs and how you kind of carried that on. So I love that. I want to touch on before we move on, I want to touch on this, another piece of statistics that I found, and it talks about a recent survey that, again, Pew Research, who does a lot of political polling, they did a survey this past August that indicated that 70% of Black registered voters plan to vote for Democrats as their congressional candidate in their districts, and only 6% of Black registered voters said they would vote for Republican candidates for Congress during these midterms. And so, Craig, both of us voted early in the midterm elections this year, and we kind of shared our ballots with each other and talked about how we voted. I voted overwhelmingly for Democratic candidates, and you mentioned to me that you voted for every Republican candidate on the ballot.
Right.
So what I want to ask you is, when you cast your votes last week, what was at the forefront of your mind?
The values that my party have. That's all I look for. Listen, I tell people, I don't care who's running. I really don't care who's running. I just need to know that I'm going to vote on the right side. I can never, in my entire life, from the education that I've had from reading, ever, you couldn't pay me $1 million, $10 million to cast my vote on a party that enslaved my ancestors. I can't do that. I'm awake now. Before I was woke, and every 4 years I would cast my vote towards the slave master. I can't do that anymore. My vote will always be cast over here, so I go straight down the ballot, Republican, because my party values don't change. I don't care who's in office. You can call who's in office a racist all day long. My values don't change. Same-sex marriage, we don't do that. Abortions, we don't do that. Other things, taxing big government, taxing the rich with a higher tax, we don't do that. Big government, we don't do that. And I can go on and on and on. So I cast my vote on where my values most line up with. Listen, I'm a straight-up hypocrite. If I go to church, and this is what them 29 billion people or 32 billion people that you're talking about, this is what happens. Every Sunday morning, they go to church. They raise their hand. They shout hallelujah. Turn flips all in the church. Bounce their heads off the wall. Saying that they're praising and worshiping God. Then turn right around on Tuesday and vote for same-sex marriage. Vote to murder innocent children that God himself gave life to. And I can just go on and on. That don't line up with my beliefs. So I can't do that anymore. Now, I've heard people say, well, Craig, I ain't the one that's got a knife, listen, you may not have it, but you support it. Well, Craig, I don't believe in saying that. You may not believe in it, but you support it. And your vote says that. I heard a pastor say one time, how can you be a Christian and vote Democrat? And I strongly believe it. How can you do that? Now, other people may can justify that. I'm okay with that, justify. But me, now that I'm awake, there's no way I can go back and do that again. I can't. I guess there's a saying in the Bible that says, God says, depart from me because you never knew me. Now I get it, every reader, every listener may not believe in the Bible, and that's your choice. But here's what I ask every voter. If your God supports those values in that party, then go for it. It's just the God that I serve don't line up with that killing of unborn babies and same-sex marriage. It just don't line up with that. So therefore, I have to err on the side of caution and stay over here where this more lines up with my values, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense, and I can certainly appreciate that, but I do want to say this. I don't 100% agree. I get your point about voting based on core values, but where I kind of don't agree is when you say that because I support a Democratic candidate or ticket that I'm supporting abortion, because that would suggest that every Democratic candidate is pro-choice, which, of course, is not the case. Both political parties fall along a spectrum. So you have the liberal Democrats who are pro-choice, LGBTQ rights, and then you have the conservative Democrats who aren't for either of those. The same with progressive and conservative Republicans. There's a wide range of political opinions that exist on both sides. So I understand that you are voting based on your values and your beliefs, and that's your choice, and I definitely respect that. But I'm not going to, for myself at least, I'm not going to blindly vote Republican just because there are some Democrats out there who are pro-choice. For me, that's on them, and that has nothing to do with my personal belief system, nor do I feel like I'm going to have to give an accounting to God about why I voted Democrat. I'm sure he'll be more concerned with how I use my time here on earth and how I treated my fellow man. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I get your point, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because it helps others who don't think that way understand how some, not all, but some black Republicans think. They're holding tight to the conservative core values and beliefs, and I admire that and I respect it. We're coming up on, the end of the hour, so I definitely don't want to run over. But before we run completely out of time for this episode, I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions I wanted to ask you, but I think we gave the listeners a great political discourse and a glimpse into the mindset of an average, everyday black Republican and the values that resonate with you all. But before we end today's show, are there any closing remarks to our listeners tonight?
Oh, for me?
Yes.
Okay. I thought you were talking to someone else at the time. I'm sorry. First of all, Dr. J, I want to thank you for having me on your show. For those of you that listened in, I'm sure you would love to debate with me on some of my points. I'm not here to debate. My truth is my truth, and your truth is your truth. I'm not here to argue with you. If you want to continue to vote the way you vote, I commend you on that. We can agree to disagree, but I'm going to say this in my closing, and I've said it before to many of my people. This is, again, my truth. Here it goes. Financially, Dr. Jerry, you can find poor white Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Financially, you can find poor black Democrats. Financially, you can also find poor white Republicans. But here's what you will never find. You will never find financially a poor black Republican. I'll leave you and I'll leave your listeners with that.
Wow. Well, brother, I can't argue with you there. That's great food for thought. So great closing statement. I really appreciate you coming on. Everyone, thanks again for spending your evening with us. Remember to tune in to our next show during our new time slot, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the fourth Wednesday of each month. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Andre Jerry. Craig Whitehead, thank you so much for your time today. Good night, everyone. We'll catch you next time.